So this is going to be something of a book review, which is something I don't do a lot of, but occasionally I'll come across something that I just have to talk about, partially due to the fact that I'm a vocal processor and just talking things out helps me kind of clarify my own opinions about it, but also the fact that I do want to share some of the things that I come across with the people that have come across me. And so in this instance, it's a book called Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shrier. And she is a journalist who mostly writes opinion pieces that get picked up by like the Washington Post and the New York Times and such. And it's an investigative, more or less, piece that she did going through the data as well as the historical trajectory of the transgender craze that we're currently in the midst of. And so talking about how that originally gender dysphoria was exclusively tracked and kind of observed in adult-aged males. That they would begin with like a heterosexual form of cross-dressing and then begin to experiment with homosexuality and then begin the hormonal and surgical process of transitioning male to female. That was like exclusively, just as far as the data showed, up until a specific point, it was only men. There was almost no women, but all those that would be considered like masculine presenting women would be considered lesbians. They would be what you would call butch or stud lesbians. Well, as this transgender and transsexual craze has kind of caught on, there's been this shrinking of the masculine lesbian as these have all been swept up into being considered trans, as well as it documents something of a robbery of, which is her word, of women's history, taking any woman that would step outside of what would be considered traditional gender roles of the past has been taken out of women's history and thrust into what's called now trans history. So Joan of Arc, Catherine the Great of Russia, and Susan B. Anthony or Eleanor Roosevelt, any of these women that from history that have done remarkable things, and even like Marie Curie and things, that they've been taken out of, they're no longer considered women's history, but they've been considered, even against their own consent, now trans history, because of the fact they were acting outside of what would be considered gender normative behavior. They've just been thrust into something that they likely would not even consider legitimate of themselves. So, and how simply that one really remarkable feature of it that I didn't expect, because we all suspect, like we all know that social media and the internet influences have been affecting us and the people around us and our society as all. We know it's affecting us, but we don't know necessarily how it is in an articulate way, as well as we don't necessarily in an intuitive way understand what to remark as that's our exposure to internet, that's what's doing this, and then over here this was already on its way. And we encounter this all over the place. People have tried to say that video games cause gun violence, right? Things like that. But in this instance, literally 2007, the first iPhone drops that Apple produced. And then 2008, this literally begins to skyrocket almost as a vertical line of these people that are influencing these adolescent girls, which another amazing, like mind-blowing fact is that out of all those who currently identify themselves as trans, 80% have zero sexual contact. They've never even kissed another human being. They have zero sexual experience, yet they're saying that they have the ability to self-assess their sexuality, of which they know nothing about. So I would highly recommend that you go find this book on Audible or Amazon or however it is that you consume books, read it, consume it, and then just consider what it has to say. And see if it doesn't change your mind about some things.